Countdown Conspiracy, Chapter 11, Part 2. Now that I know he's officially my replacement, it's impossible not to imagine Sasha taking my place in everything I do. Today, instead of classes, we're trying on the first layer of our spacesuits, and I wonder what Sasha would think of the design. Spacesuits are given the technical name of Extravehicular Mobility Units, or EMUs for short. To get us used to the feel of them, we're going to get new official suits designed for us every year. Sliding into the first layer of the EMU feels like slipping on butterfly netting all over my body. It's bizarre, but a good distraction from the mind-numbing programming quizzes Dr. Schubert gave us yesterday. I wonder how Sasha would have done on my quiz. Okay, now, buckle together the tubing, Kreshkov instructs as Lizzie helps Najma get her first class done. My eyes track Kreshkov as he walks around the room inspecting each of us. During our conversation yesterday, Sasha insisted that his uncle would never try anything to hurt any of us. I want to believe that. I really do. Kreshkov has been nothing but supportive of us, but so far he's the only person we know of with motive for attacking me. This tubing is your air conditioning, Kreshkov continues, straightening out Esteban's sleeve. Keeping cool is critical, so never underestimate the importance of this layer. I nod along with his explanations, perhaps overly enthusiastically. Paranoia is making me a bit too smiley around Kreshkov this afternoon. Space is cold, but your suits are designed to trap in body heat, so there's always a chance you'll overheat. Any questions? A million, but none I actually have the guts to ask. I still don't see why we had to miss geology just to practice putting on this, Anna mutters, looking at her netted suit layer. Seems like a waste of time. Most of us won't even need to wear this in space. Just Miranda and Tamaki. Tamaki? I ask as I adjust my netting over my left wrist. Well, yeah, me, Tamaki says. I'm not just our pilot, you know. I'm your #1 flight engineer assistant. He gives me a mock salute. I file this information away, trying to hide any surprise that made its way onto my face. Oh, well, at ease, soldier, I say, returning his salute. Tamaki lets out a laugh, leaning back in his chair and putting his hands behind his head. So Tamaki is my secondary. I should have guessed. Of course they would give him multiple roles. He'd never be content in just one. Would have been nice if someone had told me, though. Anna, the reason you need to get used to these things as soon as possible is because your mission is so much longer than anyone's before, Lizzie explains. You'll want to feel like these suits are your second skin. Most astronauts only spend a few months in space, and even they need that level of familiarity. And yes, Tamaki and Miranda are the two most likely to spacewalk for repairs. But did you think you wouldn't need EMUs on Mars itself? Anna's face goes red. All right, now it's time for our lesson on the control module, Lizzie says, tapping the touchscreen behind her to bring up an interactive image. Before we get to Lizzie's lesson, Mr. Burnett bursts into the room. Good news from Dr. Schubert! Everyone looks over, wrinkling up in our EMU netting. What is it? Tamaki asks. Mr. Burnett waves at Lizzie and Kreshkov. Sorry for interrupting, he says. Anyway, since we still don't have clearance to have any of you travel, after your next quarterly exams, we're bringing your families here. Lizzie and Kreshkov look at each other, eyebrows raised. Really? Tamaki asks. Esteban lets out a whoop of joy, turning to double high five an ecstatic Najma on his right and a startled Rahim on his left. We get to see our families after all, he cheers. I feel a grin spread across my face, and I find myself glancing over at Anna for her reaction. Naturally, she isn't smiling, but her lack of a smile seems more like a frown than usual. She gets up, takes off her EMU netting, and glares at each of us. I don't understand why any of you are happy. All this means is that our families are more expendable than we are. They'll let them risk traveling, but not us. Anna dumps her spacesuit material on the touch table. I'm going to do something actually useful. Study. Have fun playing astronaut. With that, she's gone, and I'm left desperately trying to grab onto the shreds of happiness I felt moments ago. I'd only just begun to get over my attack nightmares. But Anna's point about the danger our families might face throws all that progress straight out the window. That night, I wake up clutching sweat-sodden sheets, images of Emmeline, Mom, and Dad in huge explosions reverberating through my head. To my dismay, the dreams only get worse as the weeks go on. Unable to handle the horrific images my brain comes up with every night, I end up programming Ruby to nudge me awake whenever my droidlet senses my heart racing. That does manage to help during those hours, but daytime distractions are few and far between. Najma is too busy with her secret task, which is clearly taking up far more time than she'd originally estimated. Esteban invited me to study with the boys, but after a couple of tries, I couldn't handle their ridiculousness and opted to study alone. Sasha hasn't answered my VidChat request ever since I told him that he was my replacement. There's a bitterness growing inside me that I don't like. Sasha would do better here. Sasha could handle anything. He probably knows it too. That must be why he's stopped talking to me. I don't want to admit how much I miss talking to him, so I stopped trying to call. Instead, I throw myself even more into working on our space plane. If Lizzie is right, that's at least one place where I'm making a real positive difference. Ruby and I spend more and more time in the hangar, and the days tick by one, counting down until our families will begin their journeys here. As we make our way through what I would normally think of as spring, the never-ending Antarctic sun begins to change into the never-ending Antarctic dark. The cold grows sharper, but that doesn't stop Dr. Schubert from marching us all out into it today. I'd complain, but he did so for a good reason. The full spacesuits we were measured for a month ago are ready for us to wear, and we need to get photographed in them for the media. Sleep deprivation can't ruin this one. We have spacesuits. This is one of the proudest moments of my life, Dr. Schubert proclaims. The head of the ISECG puffs up with pure delight, his usual relaxed attitude forgotten as he watches his team walk around, dressed for space for the first time. Raheem and I wait with him outside one of the smaller buildings on the island complex, under a portable shelter with heaters cranked as high as possible. Ruby is clipped to my side, powered down for the moment. Pictures in space! Esteban gleefully bounces in slow motion toward the little building in front of us. Dr. Schubert beams at him through his scarf. I can tell by the way his eyes crinkle. Proudest moment of his life, Raheem says quietly to me, with a small gesture at Schubert and Esteban. I smile. Raheem is growing on me. Sasha does have good taste in friends, even if he isn't talking to me now. Najma leaves the building, squeaking quickly past Dr. Schubert. My smile fades. Najma's the youngest of us all, and we've put a lot of pressure on her. But if anyone is going to break into Schubert's files without him noticing, she'll be the one to do it. How did the pictures go? Raheem asked her. Fine, Najma says before flitting away so she doesn't have to talk to Dr. Schubert. Esteban disappears into the building for his turn with the photographer, and I wait outside with Dr. Schubert and Raheem. Anna and Tamaki already had their turn earlier, and a few minutes ago headed back to the main complex. Or rather, Anna headed back and Tamaki tagged along to bother her instead of waiting for his dorm mates. Sometimes I actually feel bad for Anna. Sometimes. After a few minutes, it's my turn. Ruby and I head to the building, leaving our warm shelter for a brief but difficult sprint through the cold Antarctic air. My security agents follow me, stopping just outside to guard the door. Once I get inside, I let out a massive shiver. I should have worn my helmet on the way over instead of carrying it, because I know my cheeks must be bright red from windburn. This is it? I look around the building. It's essentially just a small room crowded with equipment. I wonder if Dr. Schubert knows that his prize astronauts are getting photographed inside a glorified broom closet. I wake up Ruby and look to the ISECG photographer for instructions. This way, please, she says, positioning us where she wants us among her props. I hold my helmet under my arm, sitting on a tall black stool in my bulky suit. It's definitely awkward, but far too cool to complain about. The photographer moves back to her camera and tells me to smile, but I don't need the reminder. I'm in my actual EMU, or at least the model that will fit me until I grow some more. True giddiness bubbles inside me for the first time in ages, and I more than oblige her requests. This is a suit meant for me and me alone, not Sasha. Me. Like I'm actually meant to be here. Like I'm equal to all the other cadets. Our grades aren't pinned to our suits, just our mission logo. Head more to the left, the lady instructs. I do as she says, even though shifting even slightly is tough in these heavy suits. Ruby clings to special straps on my side, mimicking my posture. She's bright-eyed and awaiting action, just like when I start her up for spaceplane work. Behind us to the side, there's that umbrella thing they use on picture day at school. Okay, now look up to the right, like you're stargazing, the woman requests. I glance up toward the white ceiling, and Ruby does the same. Perfect. She clicks her camera rapidly. It reflects off the backdrop behind me, illuminating the entire tiny room for a brief moment. Now, do the same to the left. I twist my head again, feeling the weight of the suit rub against my shoulders. In space, without gravity to worry about, the suits will definitely be more comfortable. It's been a while since I've let myself dream about our actual Mars mission. What with everything else going on, it's a relief to just have a moment to remember the amazing experience I'm going to have in a few years. I look up at the ceiling again, readying for the next string of pictures. Then the photographer's camera explodes.